this world, there are things that can only be accepted, people who must be let go, and paths that, once chosen, cannot be turned back from. Life at times renders us thus helpless. Yet if we look more deeply, we will realize that many things lost bring greater peace to the heart than things gained. A moment of pain, if endured with a little forbearance, will pass. A vexation, if met with a little forbearance, can be resolved. A word, if met with a little forbearance, will reveal no need for argument. A love, if met with a little forbearance, may no longer seem worth clinging to. And a person, if met with a little forbearance, will no longer cause sorrow through waiting. Those who truly care for us need no promises. It is enough that they walk with us through the years. A beautiful karmic connection comes not from arrangements, but from the steadfastness of heart, the tolerance and the capacity for acceptance of two souls. If the affinity exists, time and space are no longer obstacles. But if the affinity has ended, even if you meet every day, your hearts will remain distant. We often realize the value of something only after it is lost. In truth, we always knew what we had. We simply imagined it would never disappear. Try to look at the life around you. A cup of tea in the morning, a gentle breeze drifting through the window, a bird song from the rooftop. All are simple things, yet they hold a tranquility we often forget. It is only when time sweeps everything away, when these things become memories, that we understand how precious they were. Often, when you strive your utmost for recognition, others may pay no heed, but the moment you stop trying to please the world, they begin to take notice. Life is often ironic in this way. Heaven does not grant us what we desire, not because we are unworthy, but because it is reserving something better for us. To live simply is to be easily contented. Yet contented people are few, for who is willing to be simple? They complicate, compete, and calculate, thereby afflicting themselves. We suffer because of attachment, because of clinging, because of the fear of loss. Yet the tighter we hold on, the deeper the pain. Many afflictions arise simply because we refuse to be decisive. We hesitate to take up what should be taken up, and we try to cling to what should be let go. In truth, only when we dare to end what must be ended can we begin what is worthy. Life is like a piano keyboard, with white keys for joy and black keys for sorrow. But only when these two keys harmonize does the music of life truly resound in its fullness. If we have never passed through a storm, we will never know how to treasure the calm. A person matures not by living longer, but by daring to face to overcome, and to learn to remain silent amidst turmoil. In this world, people come and go, stay and depart. Everything is but temporary. What is called ours today may belong to another tomorrow. Time waits for no one. So do not lose the opportunity to make your life meaningful. Pause for a moment. Breathe in deeply. Breathe out. And listen to the voice of your heart. For sometimes, we need nothing more. We only need to be at peace with the present moment. We come into this world because we cannot but come. And in the end, we depart because we cannot but depart. Between these 2 points, birth and death, is a journey in which each person chooses how to live. Some choose resentment, some choose peace, some choose to compete, some choose serenity. But in the end, all returns to dust. If we can see life as a river, witnessing the water flow, the clouds drift, the flowers bloom and wither, our hearts will become as light as the wind. All things come not for us to possess, but for us to learn how to love, to cherish, and to let go. Be at ease, for this life is but a temporary abode. Do not afflict yourself with things that are not worthy. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. Release one affliction, and your heart will feel lighter. Your mind will find more peace. And when the mind is at peace, life will naturally brighten. In this realm of existence, from the moment of birth until the closing of our eyes, no one can escape the 4 great sufferings: birth, aging, sickness, and death. The Buddha taught that human beings come into this world because they cannot but come, and depart because they cannot but depart. Between these 2 points of arrival and departure, how many of us truly know how we are living? We often worry, busy ourselves, and chase after things that seem important, only to look back and see that most of our lives have been spent searching for happiness in a place filled with suffering. Life is like a long river, a river that never stands still. The water flows, the clouds drift, the bubbles burst, the wind rises. All things drift by unceasingly. Nothing is permanent. Human beings are the same. We come and go. We meet and part. Yet we persist in wanting to cling, to hold on, to resist this natural law. And thus we cause our own suffering. Many say that life is suffering, but few are willing to look closely to see where the suffering begins. It is not from life, but from the mind. When the mind clings, when the mind desires, When the mind refuses to let go, suffering immediately arises. One early morning, in the courtyard of a small temple in the western region, Mr. Lum sat silently on a stone bench by the lotus pond. The early morning sun cast its gentle light upon his sun-weathered face, a face etched with the deep wrinkles of years of toil. Before him, a lotus had just bloomed, its fragrance faint, its petals stirred by a gentle breeze. This stone bench was once where his wife would sit, each time she accompanied him to the temple. She had passed away 3 years ago. Ever since that day, whenever he had a free morning, he would come by, simply to sit in stillness, gaze at the empty bench, and listen to the sound of the temple bell lingering on the wind. The abbot, passing by, paused beside him and said softly, "The departed are like clouds drifting across the sky. That you still love is a fruit of affinity. That you still remember is a blessing." Mr. Lum looked up and smiled, a warmth spreading through his heart. He understood that birth, aging, sickness, and death are the natural order of things. There is coming, and there is going. There is a beginning, and there is an end. She was gone, but the love remained. And it is gratitude and compassion that preserve peace amidst impermanence. What people in this world fear most is loss, the loss of loved ones, the loss of possessions, the loss of reputation, the loss of love. But they forget that loss is a part of existence. Without loss, how could we know to cherish what we have? Without separation, how could we learn to love more completely? Life is like a garden. Flowers bloom, and then they wither. The moon waxes, and then it wanes. The beauty of a flower lies not in its permanence, but in the moment of its most brilliant bloom. The poignancy of the moon lies not in its fullness, but in the anticipation during the nights of its waning. The abbot often said that he who understands impermanence is the one who truly lives. For when we know that life is temporary, we no longer contend for victory or defeat, no longer seek to possess, no longer harbor resentment. We begin to learn to see all things with serene eyes. On days when the rain falls, we no longer complain. We simply watch the raindrops fall and smile. At times when we are misunderstood, we no longer try to explain, knowing that time will reveal the truth of all things. When people depart, we no longer cling, knowing that those with whom we share an affinity will remain, and those whose affinity has ended will naturally depart. People often learn the lesson of letting go only after having endured great pain. But if we were to awaken a little sooner, to listen to life a little more gently, we would see that suffering is not an enemy, but a teacher. Illness teaches us to cherish our bodies. Loss teaches us to value what remains. Separation teaches us to live fully in the present. And suffering teaches us to look deeply into our own minds. Without suffering, no one would know what happiness is. Without the darkness of night, we would never realize the value of the morning light. A person's life is a brief journey between two realms. Some pass through like a gust of wind, some like a flame, some like a drop of water falling into a river, dissolving and disappearing. But no matter who or what one is, no one can escape the law of arising and ceasing. Therefore, instead of fear, let us learn acceptance. Accept, so the heart may be light. Accept, so the mind may be at peace. As Mr. Lum looked at the empty bench in the temple courtyard, he no longer felt alone. He understood that his wife had never truly left. She was still there in the breath of the wind, in the fragrance of the morning lotus, in the sound of the temple bell spreading through the stillness. He smiled, his heart at peace, for he knew there are things that can be felt without being seen, and things that can remain without being held. This world is inherently impermanent. The person laughing and talking today may be gone tomorrow. The person who was suffering yesterday may be at peace today. Everything changes, and in that change, the only thing we can truly hold is our own mind. If the mind is calm, the surroundings are calm. If the mind is in turmoil, then no matter where we are, we will suffer. Many people think happiness is the absence of suffering. But in truth, happiness is found when we understand and accept suffering as a natural part of the human condition. Like the lotus that rises from the muddy mire, yet blossoms in pure fragrance. No one wishes to fall into suffering, but it is suffering that makes our hearts more compassionate, more patient, more serene. If at times you find life too heavy, try looking up at the sky. The clouds drift, the wind blows. Nothing holds on to anything else. All is natural, coming and going of its own accord. Our minds are the same. If only we do not force, do not resist, then suffering will dissolve like clouds after the rain. Whenever your heart is troubled, breathe in deeply and exhale slowly. Each breath is an act of release. Gradually release what is not needed. Gradually release old memories. Gradually release meaningless resentments. The Buddha once taught, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Everything in this world, whether good or bad, will pass. When happy, know that this joy is but temporary. When sad, know that this sorrow too shall pass. A person of wisdom does not seek to escape suffering, but learns to live with it in serenity. For they know that suffering only has power when we resist it. When we relinquish our struggle and accept it, suffering is transformed into a lesson. Mr. Lum departed as the sun climbed high in the sky. His footsteps were slow on the gravel path. The temple bell rang out again. Each peal was like a reminder. This life is but a temporary abode. Do not be overly concerned with gain and loss. Live so that every remaining moment is a moment of peaceful abiding. Someone asked if he felt lonely now, living by himself. He only smiled. Of course, there is sadness. But sadness is also a friend. It is through suffering that one learns to love. It is through loss that one understands what is of value in this transient world. No one can avoid suffering, but everyone can learn to transform suffering into peace. When we stop complaining, stop blaming, stop demanding, we will find that life no longer carries such a heavy burden. When we know how to be grateful, to accept, to live with gentleness, and to let go, we will see suffering. It too is merely like a rain shower that comes and goes, leaving the earth fresher than before. Be at ease, for this life is a temporary abode. Do not afflict yourself with things that are not real. Look deeply to see that all things are like the morning mist, fragile yet beautiful. Breathe lightly to hear in each breath a lesson on release. Live as if today is the only day that remains, so that gratitude may blossom in your heart. And when night fell, the temple bell rang out once more. Mr. Lum sat in his small house, gazing out at the courtyard where the moonlight bathed the stone bench. He gently brought his palms together and smiled. His heart was like the surface of a placid lake, no longer stirred by waves. For he knew that when someone departs, it is only the body that goes. The love remains. Birth, aging, sickness, and death are but musical notes in the symphony of human existence. And when we know how to listen with a tranquil heart, all suffering becomes a bell of reminder. Live with gentleness, love with compassion, and release all things lightly, so that one day, when we depart from this world, we may go with a smile, unburdened by any attachment. Have you ever asked yourself why, in the midst of this vast world, we inflict suffering upon ourselves? Why, when the sky is still blue, the wind still blows, and the flowers still bloom, do we feel our hearts heavy with unease? The Buddha taught that the root of all suffering lies within the human mind itself. It is because the mind is not at peace, and it is not at peace because it is filled with greed, with aversion, and with delusion. Greed makes us want more than we need. Aversion makes us resent what is not to our liking. Delusion makes us muddled, unable to see the true nature of life. Each time we let our minds chase after these things, suffering arises. Human beings are not inherently afraid of suffering, but they are afraid of loss. We fear losing affection, losing honor, losing recognition, losing things that, in truth, no one can hold on to forever. All suffering begins with the word want. We want to be loved, want to be praised, want to be better than others, want life to go our way. And when these wants are not fulfilled, our hearts begin to waver, and suffering seeps into every thought. Many people live their entire lives in search of something that is not real: perfection. But life is inherently imperfect. The human heart is ever changing, and all things are impermanent. The more we want what we cannot have, the more we torment ourselves. In a small house in a riverside village lived Miss Han, a gentle and diligent woman who spent all her years caring for her husband and children. Every day, she would rise early to cook, wash, clean, and tend to every meal, every cup of water. But there was one small thing that always vexed her: a ceramic bowl with a chipped rim. She cherished that bowl, for it was a wedding gift from her mother. Every time she saw it in the cupboard, she would sigh. She had thought of throwing it away, but felt it was a pity, so she kept it, both holding on to it and resenting it. Each time she cooked and saw the chipped bowl, she felt a sense of discomfort, like a small thorn in her heart that could not be removed. One sunny afternoon, a beggar passed by the gate. Her daughter, Mai, seeing him, ran into the kitchen and ladled a full bowl of rice for the old man. By chance, the little girl used the chipped bowl. The moment Han saw it, she grew angry and was about to scold her daughter. But as she reached the doorway, she froze. The old beggar was sitting on the porch, holding the bowl of rice in both hands. He gave a gentle smile and said, "Thank you. This bowl is very beautiful, and the rice is delicious." His words were like a soft bell chiming in her heart. Suddenly, she fell silent. The bowl she considered flawed. Another saw as beautiful. She realized then that the suffering was not in the bowl, but in the way she looked at it. She sat down and watched the old man eat. The sunlight slanted through the areca palms, casting a shimmering, dew-like glow on his white sleeve. She felt her heart soften. She smiled, realizing that for all these years, it was not the bowl that had caused her suffering, but her own clinging mind that had given rise to it. From one small chip, she had nurtured in her heart so much vexation, so much annoyance, so that every time she saw it, she summoned her own suffering. Human life is just like this. We often make ourselves suffer over very small things. A disagreeable word from someone, and we ponder it all day. A word of praise for others that does not include our name, and we feel slighted. One imperfect thing in life, and we become angry, critical, and self-tormenting. In truth, no one intentionally makes us suffer. It is only that we have not learned to see all things with a peaceful mind. The Buddha taught that suffering is due to attachment. When we are attached to forms, we will suffer when forms change. When we are attached to feelings, we will grow weary when feelings fade. When we are attached to a person, we will suffer when that person departs. And when we are attached to our own desires, we will be hurt each time life does not go as we wish. One who understands the Dharma is not one who encounters no suffering, but one who knows that suffering is just a part of the stream of human existence, coming and going like clouds across the sky. There are times we are angry with someone simply because they do not do as we think they should. There are times we torment ourselves over a small mistake from the past. There are times we suffer because we want others to understand us, yet we make no effort to understand them. At such times, if we could just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, exhale gently, and forbear for but an instant, our hearts could find peace. A spoken word, if met with forbearance, will not turn into a wound. A feeling, if met with forbearance, will not turn into hatred. A mistake, if met with forbearance, will become a lesson. What is called suffering does not, in fact, come from the outside. It arises from our own reaction to circumstance. The same event, one person sees as suffering, while another sees it as normal. The same words, one person feels insulted, while another simply smiles and lets them pass. Therefore, whether there is suffering or not is determined by our own mind. A practitioner is not someone who no longer has emotions, but one who knows how to be the master of them. When the mind is still as a mountain, then no matter how fiercely the winds of life may blow, the heart remains at ease. If one day you find yourself saddened by trivial matters, remember the story of Miss Han and the chipped bowl. When we cannot accept imperfection, we will always live in unease. But when we accept that everything can be imperfect, our hearts immediately become lighter. Life is like a painting with a full spectrum of light and dark colors. The dark colors are not bad, for it is because of them that we can clearly see the light. People are the same, at times weak, at times mistaken, at times weary. Do not fear the chips and cracks of your life, for it is through them that the light of understanding seeps in. Some say that happiness, in truth, lies not in everything being perfect, but in knowing how to accept even that which is imperfect. Just as in an ancient temple, the old bronze bell has become chipped and worn over the years, yet whenever it is touched by a gentle breeze, its resonant, deep, and warm sound still lingers, calming the human heart. True beauty lies not in form, but in the serenity that radiates from within. Life always has things we cannot control. People may misunderstand us. Time may take away what we treasure. The body may age and weaken with the years. But our mind, if we know how to preserve it, can still be at peace. Peace is not the absence of suffering. It is knowing suffering without letting it possess the mind. Peace is when we see something not to our liking, yet the heart remains clear. Peace is when we hear a discordant sound, yet still know how to smile. Peace is when we look upon imperfections, yet still feel gratitude for being alive, for being able to feel, for being able to love. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, he did not banish suffering, but looked directly into it. It was by looking directly that he understood the nature of suffering, that it is impermanent, that it is dependently arisen, that it is not real. We are the same. Only when we dare to face our own minds can we understand why we suffer, and from there, learn how to let go. Letting go is not abandoning responsibility. It is abandoning the need for control. Letting go is not indifference. It is ceasing to demand. When we stop resisting reality, we begin to find peace. Han recounted that from that day on, she no longer felt discomfort when she saw the chipped bowl. She still used it every day, and each time she looked at it, she remembered the smile of the old beggar, remembered the simple yet profound lesson. Life is inherently imperfect. It is only the human heart that refuses to be at peace. She began to practice looking at everything more lightly. When her husband was irritable, she would smile, thinking perhaps he was tired. When her child dropped a bowl of rice, she did not scold, but simply said, "It's all right, as long as you enjoy your meal." When it rained, she no longer complained about wet clothes, but quietly brewed a cup of tea and sat listening to the sound of the rain falling outside. Day by day, she found herself living more slowly, but more joyfully. Peace does not come from the outside. It comes from within. She realized that if her heart knew contentment, then any circumstance was happiness. If her heart knew gratitude, then everything around her became beautiful. And then, one quiet evening, as the last rays of sunlight streamed into the kitchen, illuminating the chipped bowl on the table, she suddenly understood something profound. The bowl had never made her suffer. It was only that she had never been at peace with it. Just as this life has never intentionally caused us pain, it is only that we have never learned how to live calmly with its imperfections. Suffering is not a sentence, but an opportunity to understand ourselves better. Every sorrow is a bell of awakening, reminding us to return to our true selves. When we understand this, suffering is no longer an enemy, but a gentle friend, one who helps us to mature, to love, to let go, and to abide in peace. As the curtain of night fell, the distant temple bell rang out again, deep and resonant. Han gently closed her eyes and listened. In her heart, there was no more resentment, no more regret, only a feeling of gentle lightness. For she knew that this life is, in its essence, a temporary abode. And in this temporary abode, the one thing we must learn is not how to accumulate more, but how to release the things that cause the mind to be unquiet. When the heart knows acceptance, when the mind knows forbearance, when wisdom knows understanding, when the spirit knows peace, suffering dissolves, and serenity will remain forever in every breath, in every rhythm of a person's life. There are days when we walk through life, and our hearts are like the ocean waves. Even the slightest breeze can cause them to swell and surge. A contrary word, an indifferent glance, an unfulfilled wish, and a storm of anger rises in the mind, making it impossible for us to see the peace that is inherently there. A person's life is a river, and the mind is the surface of that river. When the wind of anger arises, the water becomes turbid, and the waves rise high. We can no longer see our own reflection. The Buddha once taught, "Take one step back, and the wind and waves will calm. Retreat one step, and the sea is vast, the sky is high. This saying is simple, yet it contains a profound wisdom. For forbearance is not swallowing down resentment in silence. It is pausing to see anger clearly before it has a chance to erupt. In life, everyone has moments of impulsiveness that, upon looking back, bring only regret. Once the heat of anger has passed, the words have been spoken. The glance has inflicted a wound, and all that remains is an emptiness filled with remorse. Sometimes, just a little forbearance, a second of pause, a slow breath, and everything could have been different. The ancients said, "One act of forbearance brings 9 parts peace." Forbearance does not make us weaker. It makes us stronger than our own selves. For a person who knows forbearance is not one who is subjugated, but one who is master of their mind. Mr. Tree, a taxi driver in the city, understood this lesson one night during a torrential downpour. It was late. After driving for nearly 10 hours, all he wanted was to pick up a few last fares and go home to the bowl of congee his mother had left for him. The rain was heavy, the traffic was jammed, and he was weary. A middle-aged man hailed his cab, his face tense. He got in and said sharply, "Hurry, I'm in a rush." Tree nodded and said softly, "Yes, sir. I'll take the shortest route." Just as the car turned into a small street, the man shouted, "Why didn't you take the other road? Are you trying to go the long way to get more money?" A surge of anger rose in Tree. He had been tired all day, and now he was being falsely accused. The desire to stop the car and argue rose within him. But in that instant, it was as if his mother's voice echoed in his mind. "A little forbearance, and the wind and waves will calm." He remained silent, his hands firm on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road, glistening with city lights. The passenger behind him had not yet calmed down. His words continued, incessant and heavy. Tree took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. He thought to himself, "Just let him speak. I will guard my own mind." The anger in his heart gradually subsided, like foam dissolving into the sea. When the car stopped, the man sat in silence, his shoulders trembling, his eyes red. He said softly, "I'm sorry. I just received news that my son was in an accident. I lost my composure." Tree looked at him, his own heart sinking. The bowl of congee his mother had made was growing cold at home. But in that moment, he understood that his silence had preserved something far more precious: peace of mind. If he had become angry then, perhaps both of them would have been hurt. But by pausing for a moment, he had avoided a storm within his own mind, and had also helped the other man avoid a fresh wound. Forbearance, in truth, is a form of wisdom. Forbearance is not enduring until resentment builds up in the heart. Forbearance is knowing when to step back to see clearly the root cause of suffering. When we forbear, we do not suppress our emotions. Rather, we illuminate them with the light of mindfulness. When anger comes, we see it, we recognize it, but we do not let it control us. It is like standing on the riverbank, watching the water flow without jumping into the whirlpool. A person who knows forbearance is one who knows how to pause, to observe how their own mind is moving. The Buddha taught that with forbearance, resentment is transformed, aversion is extinguished, and wisdom arises. When we forbear, resentment dissolves, anger has nothing to cling to, and wisdom immediately arises. Some ask why forbearance gives rise to wisdom. It is because when we are not swept away by emotion, our minds are clear. And wisdom is only revealed when the mind is as clear as a mirror, like the surface of a lake. When the water is muddy, the moon cannot be reflected. When the water is still, the moon appears. Wisdom is the moon, and the mind is the water's surface. To see the moon, all that is needed is for the water to be still. Many people think that forbearance is weakness, that it is passive acceptance. But in reality, forbearance is an expression of inner strength. An angry person is easily provoked, but a person who knows forbearance has inner power. Forbearance is when we stand in the midst of a storm and still keep our hearts unshaken. Forbearance is when we are misunderstood, but do not rush to defend ourselves, understanding that time itself will be the witness. Forbearance is when we see another's mistake, but still know how to listen, understanding that everyone has their own perspective. Forbearance is when we are hurt, but still know how to choose gentle words, not wanting to sow more suffering for others. In daily life, there are countless situations that test our forbearance. When loved ones argue, when work does not go smoothly, when someone insults us, when we suffer loss or betrayal. Each time, if we are not mindful enough, we can easily let slip words that will later cause us pain. But if we pause for just 1 second to breathe, to recognize, anger is present, then in that moment, we have mastered our minds. That is meditation in daily life. Try this small exercise that Zen masters often teach. When you feel anger, do not try to chase it away, nor let it control you. Simply breathe. Breathing in, know that you are breathing in. Breathing out, know that you are breathing out. Feel the breath passing through your nostrils, down into your chest, and out of your body. Observe the anger as you would a cloud passing across the sky. Do not name it. Do not judge it. Just watch. You will then see the anger dissolve on its own, like a cloud dispersed by the wind. When the mind knows how to stop, suffering also stops. Tree returned home late that night. The congee his mother had made was cold, but as he ate, he felt an unusual warmth. His mother smiled gently and asked, "Why are you so late tonight, my son?" He replied, "I learned a lesson in forbearance today, mother." His mother nodded and said only, "If you can forbear, your heart will be at peace." Her words were simple, yet they seemed to contain a whole sky of understanding. His mother's life had weathered many storms and endured many injustices, but he had never seen her raise her voice to anyone. Perhaps it was precisely because of this forbearance that his mother had always kept her peaceful smile, no matter the circumstances. There are people who go through their entire lives without learning how to forbear, and so their lives are filled with weariness. For the sake of a single word spoken by another, they can remain angry all day. For a small mistake, they can blame themselves endlessly. For one thing, not to their liking, they can wound a loved one. Yet, if we understand that each person is living out their own karma, acting according to their own ignorance, we will see that no one is truly worthy of our resentment. Forbearance, in that moment, is not suppression, but compassion. Forbearance is to protect one's own heart from the wind and storm, not to let others trample upon it. When we forbear, it does not mean we allow others to continue doing wrong. It means we know how to choose the right moment to speak, to act. Forbearance helps us see the problem clearly before we make a decision. A person of wisdom always knows when to be forbearing, for they understand that words spoken in anger are like fire in the hand. Wherever they are thrown, they burn both parties. In the Dharma, there are 3 types of forbearance: forbearance in the face of adversity, forbearance in the face of praise and criticism, and forbearance in the face of oneself. Forbearance in the face of adversity is not retreating when encountering difficulties. Forbearance in the face of praise and criticism is not becoming arrogant when praised, nor angry when criticized. Forbearance in the face of oneself is recognizing the greed aversion and delusion arising in the mind and not being carried away by them. This is the highest form of forbearance, for the greatest enemy is not another person, but the very storms within our own hearts. Try looking at the life around you. You will see that the most serene people are not the most favored, but those who know forbearance. They do not react hastily, are not easily hurt, and do not easily hurt others. They are like a tranquil lake, reflecting all things, but allowing nothing to muddy its waters. Meanwhile, an angry person is like a fire, consuming everything, including themselves. Forbearance is water. Water extinguishes fire. Water cools. Water nurtures life. When we know forbearance, we know how to love more deeply. When we know forbearance, we understand that each person has their own suffering. The person who scolds us may be in pain. The person who insults us may be wounded. If we respond with anger, we only add suffering to one who is already suffering. But if we respond with forbearance, we are offering them a chance to find calm. And in that very moment, our own hearts are also healed. That night, Tree looked out the window. The rain had subsided, and a gentle wind stirred the branches. There was no longer a storm in his heart. He understood that life would bring many more rains like this. But if the mind knew forbearance, then no matter how the storm raged outside, within would remain a patch of tranquil sky. When we know forbearance, we no longer fear suffering, for forbearance is the anchor that holds the vessel of the mind steady in the ocean of life. When the wind blows, the boat does not drift. When the waves rise, the boat does not capsize. Forbearance helps us remain steadfast through all vicissitudes, helping us keep our hearts from being swept away by trivial things. And then, in the quiet moment at the end of the day, as the breath merges with the fading sound of distant rain, we can practice a small meditation. Breathing in, I know I am still alive. Breathing out, I know I am at peace. Breathing in, I recognize the anger that once caused me suffering. Breathing out, I smile at it, as one smiles at a stubborn child who has just been soothed. All anger will eventually dissolve. All waves will eventually calm. When we know how to stop, the ocean of the heart grows still, and the sky of the mind grows quiet. Therefore, remember that in all the storms of life, with just a little forbearance, we can preserve our peace. Forbearance does not cause us to lose anything. It only brings us more clarity, more compassion, more wisdom. A little forbearance, and the wind and waves will calm. Retreat one step, and the sea is vast. The sky is high. And when the human heart is as still as a lake after a storm, we will hear a sublime bell resonating from within our own minds, the bell of serenity, of wisdom, of boundless compassion in this temporary human realm. There is an old saying, "Life is like a suitcase. When you need it, pick it up. When you no longer need it, put it down." People are often weary, not because the road is long, but because they carry too many unnecessary things. In that suitcase of life, some fill it with wealth and fame, while others fill it with regrets, resentments, and wounds. We all have things we cannot bear to let go of, thinking that holding on is a way to control, to protect, to not forget. But in truth, the very things we try to hold are the things that hold us back, weighing down the soul, preventing it from being free. Letting go is not giving up on life, but pausing to continue the journey with ease. In the Buddha's teachings, there is a verse, "Without letting go, there can be no freedom. Without letting go, suffering will forever follow." The suffering of human beings largely comes not from external circumstances, but from a mind that clings and attaches. When we cling to something that has passed, we are living with the shadow of the past. When we fear things that have not yet come, we lose the present moment. Letting go is the art of mindfulness, the courage to look into one's own mind and say, "I no longer need to hold this, for that which has passed already belongs to impermanence. What remains is a lesson, not a wound." Some ask, "But how can I let go when the wound still hurts, when the memory is still like a rope binding my heart?" The answer lies in understanding. When we truly understand impermanence, we will no longer fear loss. When we understand dependent origination, we will no longer harbor resentment. And when we understand the nature of the mind, we will realize that nothing truly belongs to us. What is called loss is, in truth, merely a shifting of karmic affinities. Just as a flower falling to the ground is not lost, but is returning to the earth to await another day to bloom, letting go is a way of allowing all things to return to their rightful place. One misty afternoon in Dalat, an elderly woman with silver hair was seen sitting on her porch, holding a bundle of faded letters. This was Grandma Nguyet. She had lived for over 80 years, through countless ups and downs. In her old drawer were hundreds of unsent letters, all written to the only son from whom she had been estranged for nearly 20 years. That son had once wounded her deeply, saying words a mother should never have to hear. She had once cried until her tears ran dry, had been so angry she could not bear to mention his name. but every night, when the wind blew through the cracks in the door, she would remember him and write a letter, not to blame, but to pour out all that was pent up in her heart. The letters were never sent because she feared that sending them would only reopen old wounds. And so the years passed, and the letters lay quietly in a wooden box, like a sorrow that had fallen asleep but had never been resolved. One day, Grandma Nguyen decided to gather all those letters and take them to the back of her garden, to the spot where a rose bush, planted by her son when he was a boy, still grew. She burned the letters, one by one, until they turned to ash. The fire blazed and the smoke drifted up, dissolving into the evening sky. She whispered, "I give this pain permission to pass." When the last embers died, she felt a lightness in her heart. That night, she slept more peacefully than she had in years. Letting go is not forgetting. It is ceasing to hold on to what weighs us down. That old woman did not forget her son, nor did she forget the years of suffering. She simply chose not to let the past control the present. Letting go is an act of wisdom, not of weakness. When we let go, we do not lose. Rather, we gain peace. We gain freedom. We return to our true selves. Some believe that holding on is a sign of love, but in truth, genuine love can only exist when we know how to let go. Like a hand clenched tightly around sand, the tighter we grip, the more sand slips through our fingers. Only when the hand is open can the sand lie peacefully in the palm. So many people suffer because they do not know how to let go. Some harbor endless resentment toward those who have hurt them, not realizing that this resentment is only hurting themselves. Some refuse to leave a job or a relationship, even when they know it is no longer suitable, because they fear the emptiness, fear the change. But the more they cling, the more exhausted they become. Clinging to something that has passed is no different from trying to hold back a flowing river. The water will not stop for our hands. It will only make our hands grow weary. The Buddha taught that letting go does not mean losing, but allowing things to return to their natural state, like a flower that blooms and then withers, like the moon that waxes and then wanes, like a wave that rises and then falls. Nothing remains forever in one form. When we understand this, we will no longer be so afraid of change. In truth, it is in each loss that we learn to love more correctly. It is in each act of letting go that we learn to live more freely. Try to look within yourself. Is there something you are holding tightly in your heart, refusing to let go? Perhaps it is a person, a mistake, a resentment, or just a broken dream. If you still feel heavy, sit down and take a very deep breath. Acknowledge that thing with all sincerity, and then whisper, "I give this permission to pass." Do not force yourself to forget. Simply allow it to drift away, like a river carrying a yellow leaf, without force, without clinging. When the mind stops, suffering also dissolves. Letting go is not just an act of the mind. It is also the practice of mindfulness. Every day, practice observing your mind. When you see anger arise, do not rush to suppress it, nor let it control you. Simply recognize, anger is present. Breathing in, I know I am angry. Breathing out, I know I am not the anger. The anger is just a cloud that will soon pass. I am the vast sky. When we look with the eyes of the sky, we will no longer be obscured by the clouds. That is letting go. Letting go is not weakness. It is the strength of one who understands. When we can look at a wound without reacting, when we can smile in the midst of loss, that is when our minds have matured. Like a pine tree standing firm in the wind, not because it is not swayed, but because its roots are deeply anchored in the earth. A person who knows how to let go is the same. It is not that they do not feel pain, but that they know how to return to their roots, where peace always exists. Life is short. Every moment that passes is an opportunity to live more lightly, to love more deeply, and to release what is not worth keeping. When we let go, not only does our mind become lighter, but others are also liberated. For it is often our own clinging that causes others to suffer. When we forgive, we not only free the other person, we also free ourselves. Forgiveness is not because they deserve it, but because we deserve to be at peace. Remember, no one can make us suffer if we do not hold on to suffering ourselves. Someone who once hurt us may have long forgotten, yet we continue to clutch that pain every day like a wound that refuses to heal. When we let go, that scar will gradually soften. And then one day, we will look back and smile, knowing that the very pain that once brought us to our knees has now become the stepping stone that helped us grow taller. When night falls, sit in silence for a while. Listen to the soft whisper of the wind, the rustle of leaves touching, the beat of your own heart. Let these sounds remind you that all things are flowing. Nothing stands still forever. Let your heart soften, like a flower petal falling in the wind. Only when the heart is soft can we be truly at ease. And when one day you realize that you can think of the past without pain, can speak of a person who once hurt you without resentment. That is the sign that you have truly let go. The door to freedom is not far away. It is right in the moment you release your grip. Freedom is not about going somewhere else. It is about staying with yourself in peace and tranquility. In this life, everyone has their share of imperfections. But to know how to let go is to know how to choose the most complete part from among those imperfections to live by. Like Grandma Nguyen, who needed not the unsent letters, but only a small flame to warm the remainder of her life. When the mind is light, the footsteps are steady. When we let go, we lose nothing. We are only returning to ourselves, pure, free, and full of love. Therefore, if your heart is still entangled today, say this to yourself: I give this pain permission to pass. Let life flow more slowly. Let the mind breathe. Let the heart be at peace. You will then see that letting go is not difficult. All it takes is a moment of understanding, a deep breath, a single instance of daring to say goodbye to what is old. Then you will see the door of freedom open, and beyond that door is a sky so clear, a place where the mind is no longer heavy, where the heart holds only the light of peace. In this life, nothing is random. The people you meet, the events you experience, the joy or suffering you have tasted, all have a profound reason. The Buddha taught that all phenomena arise and cease due to causes and conditions. Nothing in life comes into being on its own, nor does it disappear on its own. All is an assembly of causes and affinities. When the affinity arrives, we meet. When the affinity ends, we part. If we can understand this, we will cease to blame, cease to resent, cease to cling. All that will remain is a heart of gratitude. For every person who walks through our life brings a lesson, a mirror, or some awakening that we need in order to grow. There are people who pass through our lives for but a brief season, yet leave a lasting impression. There are events that seem meaningless, but in looking back, we see that they were the very things that changed our course. Karmic affinity is never wrong. It is only that we are not yet clear enough to recognize the message that the affinity wishes to convey. Sometimes people come to teach us how to love. Sometimes they come to teach us how to let go. Sometimes people come so that we may see ourselves in them. The parts we have not dared to face, the wounds we had once forgotten. Like a pine tree that still blossoms amidst the frost and snow, every karmic connection that comes into our lives, no matter how harsh the circumstances, contains a wholesome seed. If we are still enough to look deeply, we will see that no one comes to us without reason. The person who hurts us is also the one teaching us to understand our own hearts. The person who makes us cry is also the one helping us learn what it is to be resilient. And the person who makes us smile, though they may not stay forever, has taught us how to love more completely. Min was an ordinary office worker, living in a city filled with the blare of horns and the rush of hurried footsteps. His life had once passed by blandly, repeating like the hands of a clock that knew no rest. For a time, Min fell into a depression. He did not want to see anyone, did not want to talk, and no longer saw any meaning in waking up each morning. Everything within him seemed frozen, until one rainy afternoon, fate arranged for him to encounter a karmic connection that would change his life. That day, Min was sitting in a small cafe at the end of the street. The rain pattered on the eaves, not heavy, but persistent. As he stood up to leave, he saw an umbrella on a chair, left behind by someone. At first, he intended to leave it, but then he thought that perhaps the person would come back for it. So he took the umbrella to the counter and asked the staff to keep it safe. A short while later, a young woman entered, looking hurried, her eyes tinged with worry. She was looking for her umbrella, and when the staff pointed toward Min, she smiled in thanks. That smile, as gentle as the sun after a rain, made him feel an unexpected warmth in his heart. From then on, they got to know each other. Her name was Lan, and she was an art teacher at a nearby school. They talked, they shared, and Min felt as if his soul was gradually thawing. Lan did not say grand things. She simply listened quietly, and would sometimes say something that made him ponder for a long time. Once, Min told her about the wounds of his past, about the feelings of betrayal, abandonment, and isolation. Lan only smiled gently and said, "Did you know? The pine tree survives through the winter snow because it does not resent the snow, but sees it as an opportunity to become stronger." Those simple words were like a small lamp being lit in a dark room. From that day, Min began to change. He practiced looking at life with a lighter gaze. He learned to accept that some things cannot be changed, but that he could change the way he looked at them. Lan was like a cool breeze that came just when he needed it, helping him find faith and serenity again. But then one day, Lan had to transfer to a distant workplace. They lost contact. At first, Min was very sad. He felt a sense of emptiness as if a part of himself had just been lost. But then, in the quiet nights, he remembered Lan's words. Every meeting has its reason. And he understood. She had not come to stay, but to teach him the lesson of gratitude and self-healing. Their affinity was brief, but it was enough for him to learn the greatest lesson: how to smile at life. Life is like that. People come and people go. Nothing happens outside the bounds of karmic affinity. To meet is a blessing, for the affinity to end is normal. If we try to hold on to a karmic connection that has faded, it is no different from holding on to a fallen flower. It only causes the heart to wither further. When we understand the law of causes and conditions, we will no longer resent why that person left us, why life changed, why what we wanted did not come to be. We will simply smile and say, because the affinity has ended. And in that serenity, our minds will naturally become light. To understand karmic affinity is to understand that all things exist in a subtle interplay of causes, conditions, and effects. Without conditions, a cause cannot ripen. Without a cause, a condition cannot sprout. A single word, a single glance, a small action can be the cause that forms a karmic connection in the future. Therefore, live with gentleness, sow good seeds, for who knows, one day those very seeds may return, bringing an unexpected joy. The Buddha taught, when an affinity arrives, do not rejoice. When an affinity departs, do not grieve. While the affinity lasts, cherish it. When the affinity ends, be grateful. Life is just such a chain of causes and conditions. If we stubbornly cling to something that has passed, we only cause ourselves to suffer. But if we know how to be grateful for every encounter, we will see that all things are precious, whether they bring joy or sorrow. For every person who comes is a piece of a mirror, helping us to see our own reflection. The person who wounds us teaches us about tolerance. The person who loves us teaches us about selflessness. The person who leaves us teaches us about letting go. All are due to affinity. In the journey of spiritual practice, there is a lesson called the contemplation of dependent origination, which is to see the interconnectedness of all phenomena. When we look with the eyes of dependent origination, we will see that nothing is independent, nothing is separate. Every falling leaf, every drop of rain, every smile, every tear is part of a great flow. When we understand this, we no longer see ourselves as victims of life, but as a part of the symphony of causes and conditions. If one day you feel lonely, remember that even loneliness is an affinity. an affinity for you to return to yourself, to listen to the voice of your heart, to understand more deeply what you truly need. If you meet someone who causes you pain, do not be quick to blame. Ask, what has this person come to teach me? Perhaps they have come to help you see the shadow part of yourself, so that you may learn to love yourself more. When you practice understanding karmic affinity, you will find your mind gradually softening. You will no longer try to distinguish right from wrong, no longer force others to be as you wish. You will learn to relax. When someone leaves, you will smile and wish them peace. When someone arrives, you will open your heart to receive them without fear of loss. Love, then, becomes pure, no longer possessive, no longer calculating. Try a small meditation. Sit quietly, close your eyes, breathe in deeply, and exhale slowly. In your mind, remember the people who have passed through your life, those you loved, those you disliked, those who hurt you, those who brought you joy. Each time you remember a person, whisper in your mind, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for teaching me something." Then release them. One by one, affinity by affinity, you will feel your heart expand and lighten, like a river flowing past stones, without resentment, knowing only to continue on. Karmic affinity is the bridge connecting person to person, us to the world, and our minds to the truth of the universe. When we understand karmic affinity, we live in harmony with nature, no longer resisting the flow. We understand that meeting is affinity, parting is affinity, crying is affinity, and smiling is also affinity. All are gifts of life. The only difference is whether we recognize them or not. Therefore, if today you are in the midst of an encounter, cherish it. If you are in the midst of a separation, smile and be grateful. For everything carries a meaning deeper than you think. When we are grateful, we are sowing another wholesome seed, and that wholesome seed will become a beautiful affinity for tomorrow. Every meeting has its reason. Every parting has its proper time to end. And every sorrow carries within it a seed of happiness. We only need to be mindful enough to see, deep enough to understand, and compassionate enough to feel. In the end, we will see that no one ever truly leaves. It is only that their karmic mission has been completed. And in that understanding, we walk lightly and peacefully amidst the changes of this fleeting world. When the temple bell rings out in the quiet afternoon, let your mind merge with its sound. Let each peal remind you that all things come due to affinity and will also depart according to affinity. To see this is to see freedom. And in that freedom, your mind will be as peaceful as the surface of a still lake, where even the slightest breeze becomes the song of karmic affinity. Have you ever sat silently, looking back at the stretch of life you have traveled, and suddenly seen it all as just a passing breeze? The things that once caused our hearts to clench in agony now turn out to be nothing more than a thin layer of dust floating through life. The people who once passed through, whether they left love or wounds, were merely temporary guests on the long journey called human existence. In the end, what truly belongs to us in this life? In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. When one sees this clearly with wisdom, suffering naturally recedes. This saying is simple, yet if we take a moment to sit in quiet contemplation, we feel each word seep into our hearts like a dewdrop falling on a still lake. Life is like flowing water. Anyone who tries to grasp it is only attempting to hold a current that never ceases. The things we call ours, our home, reputation, wealth, loved ones, are in truth only temporary residents in this transient realm. When the final breath gently fades, all that remains is love. Everything else is returned to dust. Lan, a young city woman, understood this one afternoon under a pale sun. While cleaning her old attic, she chanced upon an old wooden box. Inside were yellowed photographs, her parents in their youth, her grandparents, relatives who had passed away. There was a photo of little Lan, just 3 years old, smiling brightly in her father's arms. There was a picture of the whole family around the Tet holiday feast, filled with joyous laughter. She sat down, her hand trembling as she touched the photographs. A tear fell, blurring a face in the frame. Suddenly, she realized how many years she had spent chasing after success, after fame, after things she thought were permanent, forgetting that time waits for no one. Her parents had grown old. Some of the people in the photos had already departed, and her own youth was drifting by like a cloud over a mountain peak. She smiled gently through her tears and spoke a phrase as light as breath. A person's life is like a gust of wind. Only love remains. This story may seem small, but it is a mirror reflecting so many of us. We live in a hurry, lost in seeking, trying to hold on to things we think will make us happy. But we do not realize that happiness is not in some distant place. It is in the eyes of our parents, in the smile of a child, in a peaceful afternoon with a cup of hot tea. When we look back, it turns out that the most precious things in life cannot be bought with money. There are people who only understand impermanence when they are faced with loss. When a loved one passes away, when love fades, when health is no longer what it once was, we are startled into the realization that everything is merely a guest in this dusty world, coming and going, visiting and departing. Life promises nothing forever. And perhaps, for this very reason, we need to learn to cherish every moment we have together, learn to love while we still can, and learn to let go of unnecessary things to live more lightly. The ancients said, "Human life is like a dream." Only upon waking do we realize that nothing was real. Life is like a long dream. We play the main character in our own story, experiencing joy and sorrow, anger and resentment, love and loss. But when the curtain falls, everything vanishes like smoke and mist. All that remains is whether our mind is bright or dark, at peace or filled with regret. Some ask, if everything is only temporary, then what is the purpose of living? The Buddha taught that we live not to possess, but to experience and to learn how to love. Every person we meet, every event we go through, is a lesson that helps us mature. The person who wounds us teaches us tolerance. The person who makes us happy teaches us gratitude. Every event is a mirror reflecting our own mind, helping us see clearly what needs to be released and what should be kept. When we look at life with eyes of gratitude, we will see that nothing is meaningless. In the Zen tradition, there is a beautiful saying, "Everything will eventually pass, like a cloud drifting across the sky." When we watch the clouds float by, who can hold on to their shape? Yet it is this very drifting that creates the beauty of the sky. So too with human life. If we try to hold everything for ourselves, we only become heavier. But if we know how to let go, to accept change as a part of life, we will find our hearts as light as a passing breeze. Lan changed a great deal after that day. She called her parents just to say a simple sentence, "I miss home." She visited her grandparents, giving them a smile and a warm embrace. She made time for her friends, for herself, for the things that brought her heart peace. She realized that living simply, with love and forgiveness, is the most beautiful way to leave one's mark on this life. One does not need to be brilliant. Simply living with kindness is enough for the fragrance of the soul to spread on the wind. Someone once said, Life is not long, but it is long enough for us to love. If we live with a mind full of resentment and blame, then even 100 years is but a chain of dark days. But if we live with a heart of gratitude and a gaze of tolerance, then even a single moment can become eternal in the hearts of others. That eternity lies not in time, but in the love that is sown. When we depart, what remains is not possessions or fame, but the warm memory of us in the hearts of others. Therefore, let us learn to look at life through the eyes of a traveler. Every place we pass through, every person we meet, every teardrop or smile is a part of the journey back to our true selves. Do not regret, do not lament, do not compare, for all are but guests in this dusty world. All things come to prepare us for a new lesson, and then they will depart to make way for the next. When we understand this, our minds will no longer be bound by gain and loss, victory and defeat, but will be at ease amidst the changing tides of life. One morning, just as the dawn breaks, try sitting quietly on your porch. Take a deep breath, listen to the birds sing, and watch the sunlight fall upon a leaf. In that moment, you will see that you do not need much to be happy. All it takes is a serene soul, a heart that knows how to love, and a gentle smile. That is enough. For a person's life, in the end, is just a temporary journey through the vast cosmos, a place where we stop for a while to learn how to love, how to live, how to let go, and then return. And if one day you find your heart heavy with old matters, remember the image of the young woman, Lan, sitting in her attic, holding an old photograph and whispering, "A person's life is like a gust of wind. Only love remains." Let that phrase become a gentle reminder in your heart that all we need to hold on to is kindness. As for the rest, let the wind carry it away. When we can smile at impermanence, when we can love without expectation, when we can give without demanding anything in return, that is when we are truly free. All things in life are but guests in this dusty world, but the way we receive them, with a calm mind or a turbulent one, will determine whether our life is one of serenity or affliction. In the end, when the temple bell rings as evening descends, its sound is like a call to awakening. All is but a temporary realm. Let us live so that each passing day is not wasted, so that when we close our eyes, we can smile and say that we have lived fully, loved fully, and let go fully. Then you will understand that serenity is not the absence of storms, but that amidst 1,000 storms, the mind remains as still as a lake at dawn. Because this life is inherently temporary, why must we cause ourselves to suffer? Let everything come and go like a passerby. All we need to do is remain silent and smile, for we have understood. Only love remains forever with time. One early morning, while the mist still veiled the tops of the bamboo behind the temple, a guest stopped by the small tea stall of Master Min Tin. He sat down, ordered a pot of tea, and silently watched the steam rise. In an unguarded moment, his hand slipped, and the cup fell to the ground, shattering into small pieces. Flustered, he bent down to pick them up, apologizing profusely. The master only smiled gently, his voice as serene as a passing breeze. A cup is born to be broken. A person is born to learn. The words were as light as a cloud, but they made the listener fall silent for a long time. The master poured a new cup of tea and offered it to the guest, explaining that a broken cup cannot be mended. But if a person knows how to learn from that brokenness, then happiness has already sprouted in their heart. Then the master spoke of the 7 lessons he had learned from life, from people, from the years of peaceful abiding amidst the sound of the temple bell and the wind rustling through the bamboo grove. The first lesson was to learn to admit fault. The master said that it is easy for people to see the faults of others, but difficult to see their own. When someone else makes a mistake, we are quick to anger, quick to judge. But when we ourselves are wrong, we find ways to justify our actions. The Buddha taught that admitting fault is not weakness, but the beginning of transformation. Just as the surface of still water can reflect the sky, while turbulent water distorts every image, so it is with people. Only when we dare to look directly at our mistakes can we clearly see our own minds. The master recounted that years ago, when he was a young novice, he once accidentally spilled a cup of water in front of the main hall. Fearing reproach, he remained silent and let someone else clean it up. But that evening, as he listened to the sound of the bell, his heart felt as heavy as a stone. The next day, he bowed his head and admitted his fault. To his surprise, the abbot only smiled gently and said, "That you know how to admit your fault means you have already taken one step toward enlightenment." From that day, the master understood that admitting fault does not make us smaller, but makes our hearts vaster. For where there is humility, there is light. The second lesson was to learn gentleness. The Master said that a person's life is like a river. Water is soft, yet it can wear away stone. The strength of water lies in its ability to flow around, to yield, not in trying to smash through every obstacle. A person who knows gentleness is one who understands that one does not always need to contend for victory. Sometimes silence is the greatest answer. An old woman selling goods was once falsely accused by someone, yet she only smiled and said, "Well, consider it a debt I owed you." It was this very gentleness that later caused the other person to feel ashamed and come to apologize. Gentleness is not meekness. It is the strength of one who understands the human heart. For only those with a steadfast inner core have enough calm to not react, to smile in the midst of a storm. Then the Master spoke of the third lesson, to learn forbearance. The Master said that a person who knows forbearance is not one who does not know anger, but one who understands that anger is merely a spark that burns only oneself. Someone once asked the Buddha why he could endure slanderous words without reacting. The Buddha only smiled. When someone offers you a gift, if you do not accept it, the gift still belongs to them. That teaching brought awakening to many. When we forbear, it is not that we have lost, but that we have conquered ourselves. The ancients said, "Take one step back, and the sky is high, the sea is vast." A father who forbears one word preserves harmony in the home. A friend who forbears one time preserves a friendship of 100 years. Forbearance is not endurance. It is choosing to keep the mind at peace before the storms of life. The fourth lesson is to learn to understand. The Master said, "When we understand, we will love." All resentment stems from a lack of mutual understanding. A mother scolds her child not out of anger, but out of worry. A friend who grows distant may be in pain. If we look deeply, we will see that behind every action, there is a cause. The Master told a story of a novice in the temple who was thought by everyone to be lazy and often avoided work. But one day, the Master happened to learn that the novice had a chronic pain in his leg, which he dared not mention for fear of troubling others. From then on, the Master taught his disciples to learn to see with the heart, not just with the eyes. When we can understand the suffering of others, we will no longer want to blame anyone. Understanding is the foundation of compassion, and compassion is the root of happiness. The fifth lesson is to learn to let go. The Master looked at the guest, pointed to the broken cup, and said, "A broken cup can never be made whole again. But if a person keeps holding on to the shards, they will only hurt their hands. Life is the same. Many people live in suffering, not because they lack happiness, but because they refuse to let go. They hold on to a past that is gone, a person who has left, a sorrow that is old. The Buddha taught, to fly, one must let go. When we can release the burdens in our hearts, our feet will naturally become lighter. Someone asked the Master, "Is letting go the same as forgetting?" The Master replied, "No. Letting go is remembering without pain, looking back with a still heart. The letting go of an enlightened one is not coldness, but a profound empathy for all the changes of life." Then the Master spoke of the sixth lesson, to learn to be moved. He said that in life, everyone has moments of feeling numb from sheer exhaustion. But when the heart is stirred by a blooming flower, a bird's song, or the smile of a stranger, that is a sign that the compassionate mind is reawakening. Being moved is the energy that allows a person to be grateful and to cherish life. Once, the Master saw a small child picking up every dry leaf that had fallen in the temple courtyard, gathering them at the base of a tree, and then smiling, saying, "I'm cleaning up, so the tree won't be cold." At that moment, the Master was deeply moved. The pure soul of the child made him feel as though the dust of the world had been washed from his own heart. It turned out that being moved does not have to come from grand things. We only need to know how to listen to the beat of our own hearts. And finally, the Master spoke of the seventh lesson, to learn to live. To live is not just to survive, but to live joyfully amidst change. The Buddha taught that knowing how to care for the body is to understand the precepts. Knowing how to care for the mind is to live in mindfulness. People in the world often chase after fame and fortune, forgetting to care for their bodies. They are always worrying about others, forgetting that their own minds are growing barren. The Master said that every morning he practices walking meditation around the temple. Each step is a breath. Each breath is a lesson. When he walks like this, he sees everything around him as alive. The sound of falling leaves, the sound of the bell, the sound of the wind. And he realizes that slowing down is the way to preserve oneself in the rushing current of life. A person who knows how to abide peacefully in the present is a person who is truly living. After hearing all this, the guest remained silent for a long time. He looked at the broken shards on the floor and then said, "Master, is it true that happiness is not so far away?" The Master smiled gently. "That is right. Happiness is not in what you want to have, but in the way you see, the way you understand, the way you live each day. The conversation ended, but the resonance of those 7 lessons remained, like a bell chiming in the hearts of men. Admit fault, to be humble, be gentle, to maintain harmony, forbear, to nurture compassion, understand, to love more, let go, to be free, be moved, to be grateful, and live, to be joyful. None of these are distant things, but are the path back to our true selves. Life is like a tea house. Some people come, some people go. Some cups are broken, some are full. But if we can always keep a cup of mindfulness in our hearts, then no matter how many storms life brings, we will still taste the sweet fragrance of tea on our tongues. As the sun gradually set, Master Min Tin cleared the tea table. The evening light fell upon the specks of dust, making them sparkle like 1,000 jewels. He looked into the distance and said softly, "A person's life is like a cup of tea. Both bitter and sweet are precious. What is important is to know how to savor, how to pause, how to smile. And perhaps in that moment, one understands that happiness is not something to be sought, but something that is present right here, in every breath, every glance, every gentle action in this life. When the mind is at peace, when the heart is clear, every path becomes bright. For happiness is nowhere else. It arises from the very place where the mind is calm. Perhaps in this life there is no teacher more silent and more just than time. It does not speak a word, offers no advice. But anyone who passes through it will mature, will come to understand many things that before, not even 100,000 teachings could have made them realize. People we once trusted, after years have passed, become strangers. Pains we once thought insurmountable, when we look back now, turn out to be just a stretch of road where we learned how to stand up again. Beautiful dreams of yesterday, when illuminated by the light of time, are revealed to be as fragile as smoke and mist. And moments, once thought trivial, have now become the most precious memories of a lifetime. The ancients said, "Time is a flowing river. No one can step into the same water twice." Indeed, every moment that passes is a moment lost forever. For this very reason, time is both a thief and a giver. It takes away youth, but bestows experience. It takes away illusions, but grants us tranquility. It takes away the things we once clung to with tears, and then leaves behind a mirror for us to see clearly who we are. Master Tu The clockmaker on the small street corner still sits there every day at his workbench. On the old wooden table, gears, springs, hour hands, and minute hands lie jumbled together like fragmented pieces of time. Master Two does not speak much, only silently holding a small screwdriver, his eyes narrowed as he peers through a magnifying glass. His hands tremble, but he still carefully places each component back in its rightful place. People call him the healer of time, for countless clocks, thought to be broken, run like new again after passing through his hands. Yet there is a strange thing. His own clock stopped running long ago. One day, his young grandson, Min, asked, "Grandpa, why don't you fix your own clock when you can fix so many others?" Master Toe smiled gently and replied softly, "I leave it broken to remember that time waits for no one." Then he bent down and continued his work. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating his wrinkled face and his silver-white hair. Time had passed over him, but instead of fighting it, he accepted it, lived in harmony with it, like two old friends who understand each other without needing many words. Some say that time is the one who takes everything away, but if we look more deeply, time, in fact, only returns us to ourselves. When we are young, we often rush to chase after dreams, fame, and fortune, forgetting that every passing moment is a priceless gift. We fear getting old, fear loss, fear change, but we do not realize that it is change itself that helps us recognize what is truly enduring. A betrayal, a broken love, a job that caused us suffering, all are lessons sent through the hands of time. The Buddha taught that all phenomena are impermanent, arising and ceasing, ever-changing. Nothing exists forever, and nothing is completely lost. All things are merely changing form to teach us our own unique lesson. Time is not at fault. It is only that we have not learned how to walk with it in peace. There are people who blame time for creating distance, for taking away their beauty, for taking away the one they loved. But have we ever paused to thank it for helping us realize who is true and who is false? To be grateful for the losses, because it is through them that we learn to cherish what remains. After their conversation that day, the boy Min thought about it for a long time. One morning, as Master Tu was wiping his workbench, Min asked, "Grandpa, if time waits for no one, what should I do so I am not left behind?" The old man looked at his grandson, his eyes as gentle as an autumn lake. "You don't need to chase after time, my boy. You only need to walk with it with a peaceful mind." Time doesn't leave anyone behind. It's people who lose themselves, their rush. The old man's words made the boy fall silent. Time passed. Min grew up and moved far away. Many years later, when he returned, Master Tu was old and frail, no longer able to repair clocks. The old clock from years ago was still there, its hands frozen at the 12. Min picked it up and wiped it gently, a strange feeling of emotion welling up in his heart. He suddenly understood that it was not the clock that had stopped running, but that Master Tu had chosen to let it stop, as a way of remembering that a person's life, too, must at times pause to listen to the true beat within. Life is like that. Each of us has old clocks in our hearts, things that were once precious, that once tormented us, but now remain only as memories. The more years we pass through, the more we see that what is important is not how much we had, but how much meaning we have understood from the things we have lost. Be thankful for those who have left, for they taught us to value those who remain. Be thankful for the failures, for through them we learned humility. Be thankful even for the mistakes, for they made us people who know how to listen better, to empathize more. There are days we look in the mirror and see that our hair is flecked with frost, that the old smile appears less often, and that our gaze has deepened a little. At such times, do not be sad, for that is the sign of maturity, the gift of time. A person who has been through much suffering and yet retains a kind heart. That is a truly beautiful person, like a flower that blooms amidst stones, fragile yet resolute, silently spreading its fragrance. Time does not kill youth. It only refines the soul so that we may learn to live more fully. If we know how to be grateful to time, we will cease to complain. For when we are grateful, the heart becomes softer, lighter. A grateful person does not live in the past, nor do they worry about the future. They live in the present, knowing how to smile even when facing challenges. Time is the great teacher, and we are the students, forever learning. The Master's lessons were not written in letters, but were carved by experience, by tears, by moments of awakening amidst impermanence. Someone once asked, "How can one not fear the passing of time?" The answer is simple. Live in such a way that every passing day is meaningful. When you are living with gratitude, with love, with kindness, then even as time flows by, it is not wasted. For in every one of those seconds, you are sowing wholesome seeds for yourself. A person who understands this will not fear old age, will not fear change, for they know that what is most precious lies not in age, but in the depth of the soul. Master Tu, in the final evening of his life, sat by the window, watching the sun fade on the old roof tiles. He had no regrets, only saying softly to his grandson, "I have lived enough. I have finished learning the lesson of time." Having said this, he gently closed his eyes, his breath dissolving into space like a wisp of smoke. The clock on the table suddenly chimed softly, and the hour hand moved, as if time itself had bowed its head to bid farewell to the old craftsman who had spent his entire life mending its rhythms. If we listen deeply, we will realize that every passing day is a gift from time. Perhaps it is not wrapped in joy, but it is tied with a lesson. Perhaps it does not make us laugh, but it helps us to understand profound things. And when we learn to say thank you to every moment, whether of pain, disappointment, or happiness, we will no longer fear time. A monk once said, "If there were no cold winters, how would we know how warm the spring is?" So it is with time. If there were no years of suffering, how would we know to treasure the moments of peace? If there were no people who left, how would we know to cherish those who remain? If there were no times we fell, how would we know the value of standing up? Everything that is lost leaves an empty space, and it is in that very space that the light of awakening can shine through. Let us be grateful to time, the most invisible yet most real teacher in life. Grateful for letting us know that all things have a time to begin and a time to end, so that we may learn to let go when it is time to let go, to hold on when it is time to hold on, and to live when it is time to live. Grateful for giving us the opportunity to become better, gentler, and more serene human beings. For in the end, a person's life is like a journey through a temporary realm. Only love, understanding, and gratitude are the provisions we can carry with us. There are times when a person feels as though they have reached the very bottom of despair, when all efforts seem to dissolve into nothingness, and all dreams become distant. All we can do is sit in silence, listen to the wind outside the porch, and ask ourselves why we must endure so much. But then, in that very moment, when it seems there is nothing left to cling to, the seed of maturity begins to sprout. For no one on this earth grows up in smoothness, and no soul is truly strong if it has never stumbled. The Buddha taught that failure does not kill us. It forges us into steel. This seemingly simple saying contains a profound truth. Life is not a straight, flat road, but countless turns, countless stops, falls, and risings. Each time we stumble is a time our minds are tempered, just as iron must pass through fire to become steel. If a person wishes to stand firm in the currents of life, they too must pass through sorrow, loss, and challenge. There was a young man named Nam, born in a poor village. He was his family's hope, the son his mother always believed would change their lives through the path of education. But Nam failed the university entrance exam twice. Those two failures were two deep wounds in his heart, causing him not only to lose faith in himself, but also to feel ashamed when he thought of his mother, back home, waiting day after day. There were afternoons when Nam would sit in his small, rented room, the sunlight slanting through the window, falling on the old, frayed slippers his mother had sent with him the first time he went to the city. Nam had forgotten those slippers in a corner of the closet, as a way of rejecting the past, rejecting the expectations he could not fulfill. In those days, Nam thought of giving up. He took on odd jobs to make a living, wandering through the streets, watching people laugh as they struggled to get by. At times, Nam thought, perhaps this is all my life will amount to. But then, one rainy evening, while cleaning his closet, Nam chanced upon those old slippers. His mother had wrapped them in a plastic bag, along with a small piece of paper. The handwriting was shaky, the ink blurred by water. Every step, even a wrong one, still brings you closer to the light. Just that one sentence, but it made Nam burst into tears. He sat there for a long time, clutching the slippers, feeling as if he had returned to his mother's embrace. And in that very moment, Nam understood that failure does not make us smaller. Only when we give up are we truly defeated. From that day on, Nam started over. He studied in silence, no longer boasting or comparing. Every morning, Nam would put on the old slippers and step out onto the street with new faith. The slippers became a symbol of his journey to find himself again. A year later, Nam passed the exam, not to the most prestigious university, but to a place where he had conquered himself. And from that day on, Nam still kept those old slippers as a reminder that every stumble has its meaning if we know how to stand up from it. In life, who has never stumbled? Some stumble in love, some in work, some on the very path to finding themselves. What is precious is not how many times we avoid falling, but whether, after each fall, we know how to smile and stand up. Where you fall, smile there. For the very place we fall is the place we learn how to rise. Failure, in the end, is not a full stop, but a comma, a temporary pause for us to look back. Just as when a river meets a rock, the water does not stop, but finds another way to flow. It may take a longer route, but the water still reaches the sea. So it is with people. When one door closes, it is not because fate is unjust, but because life is inviting us to walk a different path, a more suitable, a more profound one. The Buddha taught that on the path to enlightenment, we must learn to walk through suffering, not to run away from it. Suffering is not an enemy, but a silent teacher. It makes us pause, makes us look within, to realize what is truly important. Only when touching the bottom of despair does a person learn the lessons of humility, of gratitude, of letting go. Some ask, how can one stand up when everything seems lost? The answer lies not in external strength, but in inner stillness. When our minds sit in quiet and our breath becomes light, we will hear a very soft voice from within. Keep going, for you are not finished. That very voice is the seed of perseverance, the warmth of faith. If we look at failure with the eyes of resentment, it will make us callous. But if we look at it with the eyes of understanding, it will make us grow. Like a potter, each time he molds incorrectly, he does not discard the clay, but reshapes it. So it is with life. Mistakes are not for ending, but for perfecting. Sometimes the very things we most want to forget are the most worth remembering, for they teach us that a person does not need to be perfect to deserve to live in peace. A person only needs to be sincere, patient, and know how to get up after a fall. That is true maturity. It lies not in brilliant success, but in the ability to smile amidst the ruins. If we are willing to sit down and look back at our journey, we will realize that every pain holds a hidden gift. Pain makes us appreciate joy. Failure makes us understand the value of effort. Loss makes us know how to cherish. Therefore, do not be quick to blame life when we stumble, for sometimes it is those very scratches that create the light in our souls. Someone once said, "No one can mature forever in a warm embrace." A person must step out, must face, must collide. Just as a seed to sprout must break open and push up from the earth. If we fear pain, fear falling, fear trying, we will remain forever in the darkness of ourselves. But to mature does not mean to become strong to the point of being unfeeling. Maturity is when we know how to cry, but do not collapse. Know pain, but do not resent. Know we are wrong, but do not run away. It is when we know how to offer a smile amidst imperfections and say to our own hearts, It's all right. I can still take the next step. This life, in the end, is a journey back to ourselves. Our stumbles are just the way life uses to awaken us. If we keep asking, "Why me?" the answer will always be sorrow. But if we ask, "What can I learn from this?" a bright path will gradually open. Every lesson is a gem. Every wound is a door. There are people who, after experiencing brokenness, become gentler, not because they have grown weaker, but because they understand that everyone carries wounds within. They no longer want to hurt anyone, for they have learned empathy. And that very empathy is the fruit of a soul that has passed through a storm. Therefore, if today you are in a dark period, do not rush to despair. Remember that the deeper the night, the closer the dawn. Believe that what you are going through is not a punishment, but a preparation. Life is forging you, not forsaking you. Every step, even a wrong one, still brings you closer to the light. The words of the mother in Nam's story are the message for this part of life. Do not be ashamed of your failures. Be grateful, for they teach us humility. Do not fear the days you must begin again. Be glad, for you still have the chance to keep going. A serene person is one who is not afraid of falling, for they know that falling is also a part of walking. Each time we fall is a time we bow our heads and touch the earth to understand what humility is, what gratitude is, and what it means to return. When the mind is at peace, whether falling or standing, winning or losing, all are but breezes passing through life. Learn to sit still. Take a deep breath. Look into your own pain. And then smile. That smile is not a pretense of strength, but a sign of maturity. When we accept that everything happens for a reason, when we cease to blame, failure transforms into a lesson, and a stumble becomes a foundation. Then one day, when you look back, you will be grateful for the days that seemed the darkest, for it was those very days that helped you understand what light is. It was those very tears that helped you learn to cherish a smile. And it was those very stumbles that made you the person you are today, composed, profound, and serene. So, keep walking, even if your steps still tremble. Keep believing, even if the road of life is still long. Because after all, what is most precious is not where you arrive, but who you have become on that journey. When the temple bell rings out in the quiet afternoon, let your mind settle. Let each peal of the bell be like a washing away of old torments, leaving only peace in every breath. Life is a temporary realm. A stumble is but a fleeting moment on the journey. What is important is that we know how to stand up with a heart of compassion and walk on with the light of faith. There are days when we look at life and feel our hearts grow heavy. So much suffering, so much injustice, so many storms, all piling upon one another, making us want to give up. In those moments of weakness, we often wish that someone would come and save us from this chaos. Someone who understands, someone who loves, someone who could pull us out of the deep abyss of sorrow. But life, in its essence, is a journey in which each person can only walk on their own 2 feet. Others can love us, can guide us, can lift us for a stretch, but no one can live our lives for us. The Buddha once taught, "By oneself is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By an one is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. This saying is like an awakening bell, ringing out in a world full of illusion. Human beings are prone to seeking salvation from the outside, forgetting that the root of suffering or happiness begins within their own minds. Long ago, in a small village on a mountainside, there lived a woman named Mai. She lived a life of toil, going to the well each morning to fetch water, returning each evening to cook and wash. Her life passed in a series of long sighs. Every day she would lament that her life was miserable, that her fate was like that of a weed by the roadside, that if only someone had helped her, her life would have changed. One morning, as she was leaning over to draw water from the well, a young monk passing by heard her sighs. He stopped, looked down into the well, and said, "The well is no deeper, but only by digging deeper can one have water." Then the monk walked on. The saying seemed simple, but it was like a ray of light shining into Mai's soul. She sat for a long time, looking at the surface of the water in the well. It turned out that for all these years, she had only been drawing from the shallow mouth of the well, complaining that there was not enough water, without ever thinking that she needed to dig deeper. So it is with life. We cannot demand joy if we only stand on the periphery of suffering, unwilling to step in and learn how to overcome it. From that day on, Mai no longer complained. Every morning, she still fetched water, but the look in her eyes had changed. She began to tidy up her small house, plant a few rows of vegetables, and save a little money to buy books and learn to read. Her life was still poor, but her heart was no longer impoverished. She understood that to change one's life, one must begin with oneself. Others can love us, but they cannot walk through our own suffering for us. Some who hear this story may find it sorrowful, but in truth, it is a lesson that every one of us must go through. No one can drink a cup of water for us, just as no one can bear our pain for us. Pain is a personal lesson, a personal door, an opportunity to look back at ourselves. In life, everyone has moments of being adrift. Some turn to religion, some to friends, some to advice, hoping that someone will show them a way out of their suffering. But the strange thing is, even if the way is shown, if we ourselves do not walk, that path will remain only on paper. Self-reliance is the root of freedom. Self-awakening is the path that leads us out of delusion. And self-peace is the result of the process of returning to oneself. There are people who spend their entire lives searching for peace from the outside. They change jobs, change residences, change relationships. But the more they search, the more confused their hearts become. They forget that peace lies not in where we go, but in who we are. It is like a person sitting in a boat in the middle of a river. If the boat is full of water, then no matter how calm the river, the boat will still sink. Only when we bail out the water from within ourselves can the boat of life float on in peace. To save oneself is not easy. It requires the courage to look directly at what we have long avoided. We must face our fears, our loneliness, the limitations that we ourselves have erected. But only when we dare to look can we change. There is a saying that no one steps into the same river twice. But in truth, a person can stand forever on the bank of the river of suffering if they are unwilling to cross. The Buddha taught, "Within you there is a Buddha." This saying is not meant to deify the self, but to remind us that everyone has the seed of awakening. When we listen to ourselves, when we pause and look deeply into our breath, we are meeting the Buddha in our minds. For the Buddha is not far away, not in a high temple or on a distant mountain, but right in the place where the mind knows how to stop. When you are sad, sit down, place your hand on your chest, and feel the beat of your heart. When your mind is in turmoil, close your eyes, breathe out very slowly, then breathe in very gently. Just like that, nothing elaborate. For mindfulness begins in the moment we return to this very body, this very breath, without needing to run off in search of salvation. For salvation lies within every second that we are aware we are alive. Some ask, what if I am weak? I don't have enough strength. But no one is weak forever. The bamboo in the wind does not break because it knows how to bend. so it is with people. We do not need to be as strong as stone. We only need to be as soft as water. Water can fall from great heights, can become rain, a river, an ocean, but the nature of water is to flow. So it is with people. As long as we know how to flow toward the light, even slowly, we are still moving. When we stop hoping for someone else to save us, we truly begin to live. Because waiting keeps our minds in bondage. A loved one may come and go. A helper may help once and then no more. But only we ourselves are our own lifelong companions. Therefore, the most precious thing we can do for ourselves is to learn how to stand firm on our own, to understand ourselves, to soothe ourselves. To save oneself does not mean to be solitary. It is a journey of courage, the courage to accept that no one understands us as well as we understand ourselves. The courage not to hide in the comfort of others' words. The courage to step through the fear of failure, to live authentically. A person who knows how to save themselves no longer blames life or others, for they understand that happiness comes not from the outside, but from inner transformation. When we sit quietly with our breath, we will realize that suffering is not an enemy. It is just a cloud passing through the sky of our consciousness. If we cling to it, we will be swept away. But if we simply observe it, it will pass. This is what Zen mindfulness teaches. Not to chase away, not to cling, just to watch in silence. Every morning, before starting a new day, try sitting quietly for a few minutes. Close your eyes, breathe in, and say silently, "I am breathing in." Breathe out and say, "I am breathing out." It is that simple, but it is the first step in saving yourself. For in that moment, we are no longer chasing the past, not fearing the future, but are truly living. Life is not easy, but it is not cruel either. It merely reflects our own minds. If we look with eyes of resentment, life will be dark. If we look with eyes of gratitude, life will be bright. When we learn to see differently, all suffering also changes its form. And then we realize that what we needed was not someone to come and save us, but a soul mindful enough to save itself. A person who knows how to save themselves is one who knows how to sit still in the midst of a storm. When others are frantically seeking shelter, they choose to sit in stillness, for they know that every storm will eventually pass. They understand that as long as they keep the lamp within lit, the winds outside cannot extinguish it. That lamp is faith, is mindfulness, is the light of the compassionate mind. Remember that others can extend a hand to pull us up. But if we do not take it, they too must let go. To save oneself is not selfishness. It is to cherish life. Only when we can stand firm can we extend a hand to lift others. Only when we are at peace can the world around us truly be calm. Life is a temporary realm. Everyone eventually passes through. What remains is not who saved us, but how we have lived. A soul that knows how to save itself is a free soul, free from resentment, from dependence, from meaningless desires. That morning, as Mai bent over the well and saw her reflection in the water, she smiled. The water was still the same water. The well was still the same well. But her heart was different. In the gentle sunlight, she saw herself, the woman who was once weak, who once complained, who now knew how to stand up on her own, to love herself, to be at peace. The monk's words from years ago still echoed. The well is no deeper, but only by digging deeper can one have water. So it is with life. Happiness comes not from begging someone to bring it to us, but from digging deeper into ourselves to find the stream of peace that still flows silently at the bottom of our hearts. If one day you feel weary, remember that no one can save you but yourself. Sit quietly, place your hand on your heart, and say, I am here. Just like that, and the mind will gently settle. For in the very moment we realize we are still here, still have breath, still have life, we have already begun to save ourselves. When the temple bell rings in the quiet afternoon, let its sound pass through your body, through your mind, to wash away all heaviness. Every peal is a reminder. Return. To return is not to run away, but to come back to the most peaceful place, which is oneself. We save ourselves by living mindfully in every second, mindful in every step, in every glance, in every breath. When the mind abides in the present, we are no longer bound by the past, nor are we pulled by the future. In that moment, we are free. And that very freedom is the most beautiful thing a human being can find. In life, who has not loved at least once? We love not only to know joy, but also to touch the suffering of our own hearts. In the stream of impermanence, love is but a small piece of karmic affinity, coming and going like clouds across the sky. But we suffer because we forget this. We forget that all things in life have an arising and a ceasing, a coming together and a falling apart. We persist in wanting to hold on, to cling, to turn a gust of wind into a still field. and in so doing, we cause our own pain. Someone once asked, "Why is it that the more one loves, the more one suffers?" The Buddha taught that suffering lies not in love, but in attachment. When we love someone and want them to belong to us forever, want them to love us as we wish, act as we desire, live as we imagine, then that love is no longer affection, but possession. The more we want to hold on, the more suffocating it becomes. The more we cling, the more we are wounded. If we understand that the other person has come to help us learn a lesson, to help us see our own minds, then love becomes a path of awakening. But if we see that person as our salvation, as our only source of happiness, then sooner or later, suffering will come. Amidst the sound of the early morning temple bell, a young monk once said to his disciple, "To love and still suffer means the love is not yet deep. For when you truly love, you will no longer want to possess, but only wish for the other person to be at peace." This saying, at first, seems paradoxical, but the more one contemplates it, the truer it seems. Love with understanding is freedom. Love with attachment is bondage. There are people who pass through our lives leaving only a fallen flower petal, yet it is enough to change our hearts. There are people who once made us shed tears, but it was those very tears that taught our hearts to be softer, more empathetic, to know how to let go at the right time. Life does not give us anyone forever. It only gives us the people we need to learn the necessary lessons. When the lesson is learned, the affinity naturally ends, and the person naturally departs. Take the story of Lin, a young teacher who had once loved very deeply. When the love fell apart, she lost sleep for many nights. She wrote a long letter, pouring out all the things she had never said, intending to send it as a final word. But then, as she folded it, she paused for a long time. Outside, the gentle sun fell on the window frame. A small sparrow landed on the railing and chirped softly. Lin looked out, and in that moment, she realized that love does not necessarily have to end with the words, us. Sometimes, the most beautiful ending is when we choose peace, not when we are reciprocated. She brewed a pot of tea, sat by the window, closed her eyes, and smiled. "I love you, but I choose peace." From then on, Lin no longer harbored resentment, no longer blamed fate or her former love. She only felt gratitude. Gratitude because, thanks to someone who had once come into her life, she had learned how to listen to herself. Many people fear letting go because they think letting go is losing. But no, Letting go is just another way of keeping, by way of gratitude. When we hold someone by the hand, sooner or later, the hand will grow tired. But if we hold them in our hearts with understanding and affection, they will remain there forever. Even if the distance is 1,000 miles, true love needs no ostentation, no clinging, no proof. That love is like a lotus blooming in the mud, still fragrant though no one praises it, still radiant though no one sees it. A love that knows when to stop at the right time, when to step back to give the other person space, is a love that has matured. There are times we must learn to love in silence, for silence is also a form of affection. When we stop talking, stop blaming, stop demanding, that is when we are listening most deeply. When we stop hoping to be reciprocated, that is when we are healing ourselves. The ancients had a saying, "To love without attachment is to love in the way." It sounds lofty, but in fact, it is simply that when we love, we still maintain serenity in our minds. We do not lose ourselves in someone else. We do not let our happiness depend on the other person's feelings. Try to think, if one day that person leaves, what will become of you? If the answer is collapse, emptiness, the loss of everything, it means you have placed your love in the wrong place. But if you can smile, bow your head, and thank them for the beautiful memories, and then turn back to care for yourself, it means you have matured. In Zen, people often speak of the concept of maitri and karuna in love. Maitri is to offer happiness. Karuna is to relieve suffering. When we love someone with a mind of loving kindness and compassion, we do not want them to suffer, do not want them to be forced, do not want them to have to be with us under duress. When we let go, it is not that we no longer love, but that we love with understanding. Understanding that the affinity has run its course. Understanding that the other person's journey may need a different path. To love is not to bind. To love is to give each other freedom. Freedom to be oneself, to grow, to be happy in one's own way. And when both can still smile and wish each other well, that love has become a blessing. In this life, some loves come to make us happy, but some also come to teach us how to let go. Without the heartbreaks, we would never understand what peace is. Without the nights of tears, we would not know how to cherish today's smile. Love is the great lesson of the human condition, but it is only truly meaningful when we pass through it with a mindful heart. To love, but know when to stop. To care, but know when to be silent. to hold, but know when to release. Every person we meet is a mirror reflecting our own minds. When we see that the other person is not as we wish, do not be quick to blame. Look back and see what is still unquiet within ourselves. There are people whom, after so many years, we still cannot forget. Not because they are more special than anyone else, but because they are the ones who made us more awake, who taught us to love more deeply, and to love ourselves more. There are people who have left, but they still live within us, not as a pain, but as a silent thank you. Let love become a path of meditation. Each time you remember someone, take a deep breath. Acknowledge the emotion rising in your heart. Then exhale gently to allow the mind to return to the present. Do not let memories pull you away. Do not let sorrow bind you. For when the mind is at peace, all things naturally become clear. If today you are in a broken love affair, ask yourself, am I truly loving, or am I just trying to hold on to a familiar shadow? If the answer is holding, then practice letting go, for holding only makes the heart heavier. But if the answer is loving, then let that love transform into an energy of peace, spreading through every breath, every smile. Finally, please remember that we love not to have, but to understand others, to understand ourselves, to understand life, to understand that all things have a time to come and a time to go. To understand that no matter who leaves, we still have ourselves, still have the light of compassion to illuminate our way. When you can sit quietly, close your eyes, and smile, whispering, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for leaving. Thank you, for I once knew how to love." That is when you have truly released. For love is not meant to bind, but to learn how to be free in the mind. To let go is not to lose, but to see that everything is in its rightful place. Just as a flower blooms and then withers, the moon waxes and then wanes, the wind comes and then goes. All are part of a natural cycle. There is nothing to hold, and nothing is truly lost. When we understand this, we will find our hearts as light as a white cloud in the sky. We will know that peace is not in another person, but right within us, in the place where we know how to love without attachment, care without suffering, and let go without regret. And in that moment, we will hear the sound of the temple bell ringing from somewhere deep within. The bell is not outside. It is in our hearts, where every beat reminds us that life is a temporary realm, and love is but a journey passing through. Love fully, and let go lightly. I once thought that serenity was a luxury, reserved only for those whose lives had few storms and few worries. But the more I traveled the paths of human existence, the more I realized that serenity is not when we no longer have suffering, but when we know how to smile at our own suffering. It is like being caught in a sudden downpour. Some people choose to run, rushing to find shelter, but others stop, lift their heads to the sky, and feel the cold raindrops on their faces, finding a sense of peace. I once heard a Zen master say that serenity is not when the wind stops, but when the heart is no longer stormy. That saying has stayed in my mind for many years, for I understand that life can never be forever calm. Only our own hearts can master the stillness within. In this temporary realm, each person carries different burdens on their shoulders. Some worry about food and clothing, some about love, some about fame. But in the end, all suffering comes from a mind that does not yet know how to let go. I once met a woman who sold sticky rice in the morning. Her name was Hua. She was small in stature, with a sun-tanned face and thin, bony hands. Every morning I passed that street, I would see her sitting by her sticky rice stand, next to her old bicycle, the wind rustling through her hair, which was already flecked with silver. One day, it was pouring rain, the road was flooded, and people hurried past without anyone stopping. Her sticky rice went unsold, but I saw she was still sitting there, a smile on her lips. Next to her stand was a tiny wildflower, placed in a plastic bottle that had been cut in half. I stopped and asked, "Why are you still smiling on such a cold, rainy day?" She said, "Whether I laugh or cry, the rain will still fall, so I might as well smile to keep the sky calm in my heart." Her words left me speechless. Perhaps Ms. Hua knew nothing of Zen philosophy, had never read the sutras, yet within her was a very profound understanding of the art of living in serenity. It is not only the highly educated who understand the way. Sometimes it is the most ordinary people who live closest to it, for they accept life with simplicity and sincerity. I remember the Buddha's teaching. In life, there is no such thing as absolute happiness or absolute suffering. There is only whether our minds are at peace or not. When we are no longer swept away by external changes, when we know how to look at all things with a composed eye, then no matter the circumstances, our hearts will remain like the still surface of a lake under the moon. Serenity is an art of living because it comes not from the intellect, but from the awakening of the heart. It is not an attitude of resignation, but the way we live fully in each moment, grateful for what we have and accepting of what is to come. Someone asked me, how can one be serene in a world full of turmoil when work, money, and relationships are constantly piling up? I just smiled and said, serenity does not come when everything outside is calm, but when we first know how to be calm within. There are mornings when I wake up, brew myself a cup of tea, and sit silently, watching the mist dissolve on the roof tiles. When we know how to stop, to listen to the breath coming in and out, to hear the distant song of a bird, we realize that serenity has never left us. It is only that we have been too busy to see it. Like Miss Hua, the woman selling sticky rice in the morning rain, perhaps she had learned that lesson from her own life. I heard that her husband had passed away early, and her son was studying at a university back in her hometown. Every morning, she would wake up at 3 o'clock to cook the sticky rice and then cycle nearly 10 kilometers to the city to sell it. Some days the rain was heavy. Some days business was slow. But no one ever saw her complain. When asked why she never seemed sad, she would just smile and say, if I'm sad, the sticky rice still gets cold and people are still hungry. But if I'm happy, the sticky rice is fragrant and people feel warm too. It sounds simple, but within it lies a profound philosophy of life. Serenity is not being unaware of suffering, but knowing suffering and not letting it control you. People often talk about remaining peaceful in the midst of a storm. But in truth, not everyone understands that the greatest storm is the one within our own hearts. If we can keep our hearts still when the wind rises, then nothing can make us fall. Many people seek serenity in distant places, up in the mountains, in temples, in silent meditation retreats. But then, when they return to daily life, a single contrary word or a small incident is enough to throw their minds into turmoil. This is because serenity lies not in where we go, but in how we live. A person sweeping leaves in the middle of a market can be more serene than one sitting in a meditation hall, if that person knows how to accept and live with a joyful heart in every action. The Buddha once taught, when the mind is pure, the surroundings are pure. If our hearts are clear, then even in the middle of the marketplace of life, we will feel as if we are sitting under the Bodhi tree. Conversely, if our minds are turbulent, then even while sitting in a quiet hermitage, our hearts will find no peace. Serenity is not separating oneself from life, but living in the midst of life while keeping the mind unattached. I once went through a stressful period at work, always chasing after what others considered success. But the more I ran, the more exhausted I felt. Until one day, I sat down, looked back, and realized I had forgotten the most important thing: inner peace. From that day, I practiced living more slowly. I practiced eating in mindfulness, breathing in peace, and speaking with loving kindness. When I ate, I just ate, feeling the sweetness of the rice grains, the aroma of the food. When I spoke with sincerity, without rushing, without hurting anyone. When I breathed, I just knew that I was alive. And gradually, I felt my heart return to the stillness of a calm water surface. Serenity is an art of living because it is a daily practice. We cannot expect the mind to be at peace overnight. But if we are patient, if every day we know how to pause and listen to ourselves, we will see that peace grow like a seedling in the earth. At times, it may be small, but one day, when the mind is mindful enough, that seed will blossom into a lotus in our hearts. I remember one morning, passing by Ms. Hua's place, I saw that her sticky rice stand was still full, while people rushed past. I asked, "Why is business so slow today?" She smiled and said, "There are days the rice is unsold, and days the rice sells out. Life is like that, sometimes full, sometimes empty. But if the heart is not empty, then every day is enough." I looked at the small wild flower by her stand, wet with dew, but still fresh. I suddenly understood that there are people who live without needing much, as long as their hearts do not wither. People often say, "This life is short. Don't be sad for too long." But I think it is not about not being sad, but about not letting sadness last longer than necessary. Let sadness be like the rain, coming and then going, so that afterward the sky can be clear again. Serenity is when we are grateful even for the rains, because without the rain, how would we know the warmth of the sun? In my years of living in the noisy city, I have learned one thing. Serenity is not escaping the noise, but finding the stillness within the noise. Like the sound of a temple bell ringing in the middle of the street. Though small, it can still make a person's heart pause for a moment to remember that they are still alive. When we know how to live in serenity, we also become more tolerant. We no longer want to argue, no longer want to compete. We understand that everyone is on their own journey, and no one has the right to judge another. When our hearts are at peace, we can love more, forgive more easily. And it is then that we realize serenity is not only a gift to ourselves, but also a light for others. Once, I sat with a friend who was going through a painful breakup. She said she could not forget him, that the pain haunted her constantly. I told her just one thing that I had learned from Miss Hua. Whether you laugh or cry, the rain will still fall. But if you laugh, at least the sky will be calm in your heart. I did not say it to advise her to stop crying, but to help her see that suffering is also a part of growing up. When we are no longer afraid of suffering, we have already touched serenity. The art of living in serenity is learning to listen without judgment, to see without attachment, to love without possession. When we know that all things are impermanent, we will no longer cling so tightly to gain and loss. That is when our hearts are as light as the wind, as clear as water. If anyone were to ask me how to begin living in serenity, I would say, begin with the breath. Just spend a few minutes every morning sitting still, breathing in and knowing that you are breathing in, breathing out, and knowing that you are breathing out. When we truly live in each breath, we will no longer be lost in thoughts of the past or worries about the future. Serenity begins in the moment we return to the present. Amidst this impermanent life, all things will eventually change. Flowers bloom and then wither. The moon waxes and then wanes. People come and then go. But only serenity remains forever, if we know how to keep it in our hearts. When our hearts are at peace, the wind becomes a song, the rain becomes a gentle touch, and everything around us becomes precious. Today, when I recall the image of the woman selling sticky rice all those years ago, I can still clearly see her smile in the midst of the morning rain. The small wild flower, tucked into the side of her stand, remains a symbol of serenity in the world. No extravagance, no need for many words, just a gentle smile was enough to warm another's heart. I realize that the art of living in serenity is not far away. It is in our every glance, every gesture, every choice. Each day when we choose to speak a kind word instead of a harsh one, when we choose to forgive instead of resent, when we choose to smile instead of judge, that is when we are practicing serenity. And then, one day, when life's waves rise again, when disagreeable things come our way, let us remember Ms. Hua's words. Whether you laugh or cry, the rain will still fall. So you might as well smile to keep the sky calm in your heart. Then we will know that serenity is not a destination, but a journey. Every breath, every step, every glance is an opportunity to return to the peace within our minds. When we are serene, this life, though a temporary realm, is transformed into a wholesome land. And in that wholesome land, we learn that there is nothing worth clinging to, nothing worth resenting. There is only one thing worth preserving: the tranquility in our own souls. There are mornings when I sit on the porch and watch the rain fall. A drop of water gathers on a lotus leaf in the temple courtyard, round and clear as a jewel. Then, in the instant, a soft breeze passes. That drop slides off the leaf, falls, and dissolves into the earth. The scene is simple, yet every time I see it, I feel a stillness in my heart. The lotus remains there, whether the rain is heavy or the sun is harsh, whether the wind rises or the sky is clear. It stands still, still exuding its pure fragrance. It teaches me that in life, what is important is not avoiding the mud, but keeping oneself from being stained by it. In life, who has not walked through muddy patches? There are days we think we will be forever buried in suffering, in loss, in things from which it seems impossible to rise. But then, if we look closely, we will see that in that very mire, a lotus sprout can still push upward, silently and resolutely. It does not wait for anyone to save it, does not expect anyone's pity. It simply stretches silently toward the light. I think this is also what every human being must learn, to learn to grow from the darkest of things. The Buddha once taught, "From the mud, the lotus blooms. From suffering, one awakens to the way." I used to not fully understand the meaning of that saying. I thought that a serene life must be one where we no longer have suffering, no longer have wounds. But then, through the years, I have come to realize that without suffering, we would never know what peace is. Without the dark night, we would never know to treasure the morning light. Every pain we have gone through was actually teaching us something, teaching us to listen to our own hearts, to love more gently, to stop judging, to stop competing. I remember once, on a trip to a small village, I met an old woman selling lotuses by the roadside. The lotuses in her bamboo basket were no longer fresh. Some petals had wilted, but she still gently lifted each blossom, wiping away every trace of mud. I asked her, "Can you still sell these lotuses, Grandma?" She smiled gently, a smile like the evening sun on the water's surface, and said, "The lotuses are wilted, so few people will buy them. But they are still fragrant. As long as they are fragrant, that is enough, my child." Her words made me fall silent. I realized there are people who are like those lotuses, not needing to be perfect, not needing to be brilliant, only needing to preserve for themselves a fragrance, a bright mind in the midst of a world full of dust. Serenity is not avoiding suffering. Serenity is accepting all things that come with a heart that does not resist, does not complain. Just like the lotus. When the sun shines, it spreads its fragrance. when the rain falls, it bathes in the cool water, never once complaining. If a lotus can rise from the mud unstained, then a human being can also live in the world without letting the mind be clouded by afflictions. I have met many such people. They are not wealthy, not powerful, but their eyes always have a strange kind of light, a light that comes from within, from understanding and acceptance. Some people say that living in serenity is difficult because this life has too many things that cause us to worry. But in truth, the difficulty is not because life is too complex, but because our minds are not yet simple enough. When our hearts still want to hold on, we will suffer. When our hearts know how to let go, all things become light, just like the surface of a lake. Only when there are no more ripples can it fully reflect the sky. I have witnessed many people around me suffer simply because they cling to what has passed or fear what has not yet come. Some lose a love and keep holding on to the old shadow, refusing to move on. Some are betrayed in their work and then live day and night in resentment. But life is inherently impermanent. The more you cling, the more you hurt. I have told them, live like the lotus. Just let all things fall away, like a drop of water rolling off a leaf. Do not try to hold on to what is time to go. Do not let your mind become a murky pool simply because it keeps holding on to things that have already decayed. Serenity is an art, and that art is perfected only when we understand that the nature of life is temporary. When we know that all things will eventually change, we no longer see a reason to make ourselves suffer. A harsh word will eventually dissolve in the wind. A deep sorrow will eventually pass like an evening cloud. Only those who imprison themselves in the past will forever be unable to see the light of tomorrow. The day I understood this, I began to practice living more slowly. I practiced eating in mindfulness, not letting my mind wander while eating. I practiced breathing in peace so that each breath was a return to myself. I practiced speaking with loving kindness so that every word I released was a flower instead of an arrow. These seemingly small things changed my life. Each day I felt my heart settle, growing lighter and clearer, like a stream after the rain. I no longer felt I needed many things to be happy. A hot cup of tea, the afternoon sunlight, or just the distant sound of a temple bell was enough to warm my heart. Someone asked me, how can one avoid being stained by the mud? I smiled and said, don't fear the mud. Just don't let it cling to your mind. Mud can stick to your feet, but if you know how to wash, how to wipe it away, they will be clean again. So it is in life. We may stumble, We may make mistakes. We may be hurt. But if we know how to return, to recognize, to let go, the mind remains bright. What is important is not that we have never fallen, but that we can still stand up with gentleness. The lotus does not compete with other flowers to bloom, nor does it fear withering. It blooms in its own time, in silence, in humility. So should people be. No need for comparison, no need for competition, just a need to live fully in the present, to do what one feels is right, to love with a pure heart. Everyone has their own mud, but if we look closely, we will see that the mud is the very environment in which the lotus grows. Just as suffering is the environment for our minds to mature. Without suffering, there is no understanding. Without understanding, there is no love. Now, when I look back at the path I have traveled, I am grateful even for the sorrows that once brought me to my knees, for it was they that helped me learn how to stand up with a peaceful mind. Learn to smile even while the rain was still falling. Learn to be silent without resentment. Learn to let go without bitterness. And most importantly, I learned how to live like a lotus, born in the mud, grown in the mud, but not letting the mud touch its fragrance. If you are passing through stormy days, please do not be afraid. Keep walking, but walk with a quiet heart. In this life, everyone must pass through the mud. No one gets to choose a dry path. But you have the right to choose how you walk. Some become stained, some remain pure. It all lies in the mind. If you can keep your heart free of resentment, of anger, of fear, then even in suffering, you are still blooming. I often tell myself each morning, today, whether sun or rain, I will still be a lotus. For the lotus does not ask why the sky is raining, nor does it blame the mud for being deep. It just blooms, blooms to offer its fragrance to the world. So it is with us. We do not need to ask why life is difficult. We only need to live in such a way that our hearts remain bright, loving, and at peace. There is a saying I like very much. When the mind is still, life is naturally at peace. The human mind is like the surface of water. The more you stir it, the murkier it becomes. The quieter it is, the clearer it becomes. If you want to see the sky, don't try to catch the clouds. Just let the lake be still. When your mind is at peace, everything around you naturally changes. The person who once hurt you suddenly becomes easier to forgive. The task that once tormented you suddenly becomes as light as a cloud. All this is not because life has changed, but because you have changed. Finally, I want to say to you, the one listening to these words, live like a lotus. Though in the mud, still preserve your fragrance. Though in the world, still preserve your heart. Be at ease, for this life is a temporary realm. Do not cause yourself to suffer. For only when our minds are still is our life truly beautiful. As the temple bell rings out long into the dusk, I close my reflections. Everything within me is quiet. The wind has stopped rustling the lotus leaves in the courtyard. The rain has ceased, and the surface of the pond is as still as a mirror. And in that moment, I understand that serenity is not